Perspective, focus on small businesses on Wednesday. This evening, we bring the curtains down with the future perspective, Grenada and the way forward post-COVID-19. Live with us via Zoom, the return of Lydia Courtney-Francis, General Manager of the Communal Cooperative Credit Union, and a son of the soil, a leader par excellence, Dr. Nicholas Earle Brathwaite, who is joining us from the USA. What a delight. Ladies and gents, good evening, and thanks so much for spending the time with us.
Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Lydia Courtney-Francis to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Nicholas Earle Brathwaite, at this time.
Okay, good evening, Ken Roy, and good evening to Grenada, Carriacou, Petit Martinique, the diaspora, wherever you may be listening to us tonight, welcome. Tonight is the grand finale, and we are indeed extremely excited to have with us Dr. Nicholas Earle Brathwaite, as previously introduced. Nicholas Brathwaite is the founding member, managing partner of WRV Capital, a technology venture fund established in 2019, focused on accelerating the monetization and scaling of disruptive companies globally. He is also the founding partner of WRV Capital. Nicholas is also co-founder and partner of Riverwood Capital and has spent over 25 years developing technology and building technology-oriented businesses. From 1996 to 2007, he served as the Chief Technology Officer at Flextronics, where he oversaw the launch and growth of several of Flex's largest business units, including an innovative push into product development. Previously, Nicholas was a founding member of NCHIP, responsible for the development of industry-leading advanced multi-chip modules assembly process. Nicholas also helps companies develop through his unique combination of technology know-how and commercial judgment, adding value throughout the investment life at Riverwood. Nicholas earned an MSc in Polymer Science Engineering from the University of Waterloo, Canada, and a BSc Honors degree in Applied Chemistry from McMaster University, Canada. He is or was a director of INFI, Northwestern Mutual Insurance Companies, Power Integrations, Quantum Dynamics, Amircro, Riverwood Solutions, Bright Source, Tessara Technologies, Inc., and Aptima Engineering. Grenada, I am proud to present to you tonight Dr. Earle Nicholas Brathwaite.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind introduction. First of all, please allow me to commend the credit union, Communal Corporate Credit Union, for their vision and the organization that went into putting this seminar together. I happened to watch some of the sessions during the week, and they were very impressive. I also want to thank you for allowing me to share my perspective on the way forward for Grenada. Every time I have an opportunity to speak in Grenada or to Grenadians, I consider it a real privilege and a blessing. And I thank you very much again for this opportunity. I hope that this seminar and the presentation that I will make today will help catalyze some genuine efforts to change the economic trajectory of Grenada and transform our economy. Let me start by saying that I am not a politician, and I have no interest in politics, and therefore I expect to be totally brutal. I will make no attempt to be politically correct. I am also not an economist, so the perspective I share will not be based on economic theories, but this perspective I share is influenced and informed by my experience as a global business executive who have built and managed companies employing over 300,000 people in more than 30 countries, as a venture capital investor and private equity investor whose firms have invested over $2.5 billion in over 100 companies in 12 countries, and as an entrepreneur who has started several businesses, some of which have grown to over $1 billion in revenues. And being a board member and sitting on many boards and watching how decisions are made and how companies are built. But most importantly, I am a Grenadian, born and bred, and I have a deep desire to see significant improvement in the quality of life of ordinary Grenadians. I was born in Carriacou, and we moved to Montmoritz when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and then to the town of St. George. I'm a past pupil of Montmoritz Anglican Primary School and PBC, Presentation Brothers College. So in other words, I am an ordinary Grenadian just like anyone else. Before we talk about the future, it's important for us to spend some time looking at where we are and and a little bit about where we came from. Grenada's economy is very volatile. But despite some of the reports we've heard, most of that volatility do not come from external factors. In fact, most of the volatility in our economy come from Grenada-related factors, including climate. Climate is a Grenada-related factor because climate is a function of where we are. Our heavy reliance on tourism is another reason for volatility. And politics is a reason for some of the volatility. You just have to look at GDP increases prior to elections, and you can see that there are cases where there appears to be interventions in order to boost short-term performance. So we need to develop resilience. And we also need to improve both our fiscal responsibility and expand our economy. You know, there have been a lot of structural adjustments in Grenada over the years. It seems like, you know, almost every decade or so, there's a structural adjustment program. And while these structural adjustment programs are necessary, primarily to correct problems associated with living above our means, the truth is that you can't build a strong economy purely based on structural adjustments, you know, implementing taxes and cutting social programs. That is also true in business. We cannot build great businesses just simply by cutting. There has to be a plan and a strategy developed specifically around economic transformation. And building a sustainable economy will require a multidimensional approach to solving the socioeconomic challenges that exist in the country today. As I mentioned before, we are just too reliant on tourism. Tourism accounts for about 55.8% of GDP directly and indirectly, and account for a very high percentage, almost 70% of our employment, again, directly and indirectly. Agriculture accounts for under 7% of GDP, and contributes only 11% to direct employment. In addition, most of our lands are not optimized for agricultural use. Our irrigated lands today is about 2 square kilometers, which is less than 1 square mile. So we have less than 1 square mile of our agricultural land that's irrigated. And our arable land is running at under 9% when we believe it should run at above 35%. Industry, which makes up all of the other stuff, which is small-scale manufacturing and, agricultural processing and things like that, account for just over 15% of GDP. And most of the rest is probably related directly or indirectly to the medical school. In addition, about 77.7% of our GDP is related to services. Tourism, of course, being the largest part of that, and then public service being another big contributor. Now, that 77 goes across these verticals that I presented before. So don't try to add them up and then say it's much more than 100%. The tourism, agriculture, and industry is taking a vertical look, and services is taking a horizontal look. The reason this is important is not because services is bad. I actually think a service industry is not bad. But recognizing that services is a big part of our economy, there needs to be more programs in place to improve the quality of our service across all business sectors. And sadly, I don't think we spend enough time and attention on that. We need to eliminate the risk to our greatest asset. Our greatest asset is not the beautiful beaches that we have or the wonderful rainforests. Our greatest assets are the people of Grenada. But sadly, I think one can argue that over the last few years, that asset has been a declining asset. And has been a declining asset because of low productivity levels and a scarred workforce. Our pre-COVID unemployment rate, based on 2017 estimates from the World Bank and others, is about 24%. I've seen numbers that suggest it's probably a little bit less than that, maybe 20 or 19%. I don't want to spend too much time arguing as to whether or not the World Bank is accurate or the government's figures are accurate. Actually, it doesn't matter that much. Whether it's 20% or 24%, it's too high. And it is expected that post-COVID, we will probably see that unemployment rate rise probably as high as 50%. Many estimates are assuming between 40 and 50%. There's another factor that I think is important that doesn't always get highlighted. These unemployment rates are average rates. And unemployment around many of our young people are very high. If you look at unemployment among our young people, it's been over 20% for the past decade. And for low-skilled nationals, it's very high. It could be as high as 40%. For skilled nationals, probably closer to 20%. But there's a big gap between unemployment among women, especially young women, and unemployment among young men. Unemployment among young women is significantly higher than among young men. And I believe that part of the reason for that is because young men fall back on traditional sectors such as construction when we have those opportunities, whereas construction in Grenada doesn't employ very many women, probably less than 10%. So we have to seriously address the unemployment problem, because associated with unemployment is low growth and a scarred workforce. A scarred workforce develops because if you have people who have not worked for a long time, like many of our youth, we have youth who are approaching 30 years old and have never worked, which means when they should be getting into the prime of their careers and productivity, they have never worked. And then we have a brain drain. The brain drain is a serious problem. One can argue that I'm a contributor to the brain drain to some extent, although in my case, I left Grenada when I was only 15 years old. But 80% of our high-skilled folks are leaving the country. So then here comes COVID. And it is believed that COVID and its ripple effects, especially its economic ripple effects, will amplify our challenges, but I believe it will also create opportunities. I have a quote from my friend Vinod Khosla, who is one of the co-founders of Sun Microsystems and runs a pretty large venture capital investment firm. And he's said several times that every problem is an opportunity, and the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. But we have to be honest. COVID-19 did not create the challenges that we face today. The pandemic and its ripple effects have highlighted the challenges and have increased a sense of urgency for solutions to solving our economic challenges. COVID-19 is not likely to be a temporary phenomenon that we can just get through and then return to lives as normal. Andy Crouch and his colleagues, in an essay and podcast by the same name called Living Beyond the Blizzard, suggested that the pandemic needs to be treated as an economic and cultural blizzard and the beginning of a little ice age that is likely to cause a lifetime global shock, a once-in-a-lifetime global shock, resulting in changes that will affect our lives and organizations for many years. We need to respond, and we need to respond aggressively. Not responding to these changes will likely set us back even further and do so for many decades. But as I mentioned before, for every problem, there are opportunities. So the implications of COVID include tourism, which will change, the dynamics of which will change probably forever. We can see short-term and maybe even long-term reduction in remittances due to high unemployment in places like the United States and the UK. And inflation could be a significant factor as not only due to the COVID-19, but as governments respond with stimulus packages. And this will have an impact across all of our lives. And there will be paradigm shifts associated with the way people do business, and even the university and other universities, whether people choose to study in a classroom or to study online. I want to add a point here on the universities, because COVID, again, is not the fundamental cause for universities having to take a look at online versus in-class training. The internet started driving that a long time ago, but universities have been slow. You know, many years ago, even when I went to school, the repository for knowledge was within the walls of a university. Most of your education, most of your knowledge came either from books that were in the university libraries or from professors at the university. But with the internet, that has changed. In fact, many students in high school and beyond get a lot of their learning from the internet and not from the university libraries or even from their teachers. So these changes were things that had to be considered, or should have been considered a long time ago. And I sit on the board of an educational organization, actually it's a graduate school that is going through this as we speak and struggling with it because they have waited too long to take action such as this. And many schools are in that position. But as I mentioned, there are lots of opportunities. Better leveraging of SGU as a strategic asset, not just as in the way we do today as an opportunity to build apartments where everybody is building apartments in True Blue to try to house students who may or may not come back into the classroom, some of whom may not come back into the classroom, but as a strategic asset. How do we leverage that asset as a multiplier, as an economic multiplier beyond what we get today? We have to take this opportunity to also upgrade our educational system. We should take this opportunity to aggressively adopt technology to improve productivity. And we should leverage the challenges that are happening in the United States and UK and others to reverse the brain drain and convert it into a brain gain. This is brain gain. This is a good opportunity for us to try to attract Grenadian nationals, Caribbean nationals, and friends of Grenada to come back to Grenada, start businesses, get involved in education or whatever to help advance our economy. We must aggressively work on improving resilience. You know, Senator Simon Steele is a friend of mine, and I know that he is working very hard on some of his plans with me, and I'm impressed with the kind of things we're doing, but we have to get a lot more aggressive. And a big part of that is just diversifying our economy. So in building resilience, one of the most important things is to diversify our economy beyond tourism. And I have some areas here where I think we should be focused. Agriculture, which other people have talked about, healthcare, and building an industry around this asset called St. George's University. The blue economy is another area, and I know there are efforts going on in some of these areas. Construction. There's a lot of construction going on in Grenada, and construction is one of the tools we use often to have a short-term impact on GDP. But we've made no investment in trying to improve the skills and quality of our workforce in construction. I think we need to pay attention to these segments, and if we're serious about them, try to figure out ways to improve our workforce so that we have a competitive advantage in these areas. And then education. We have to pay more attention to educating our workforce across all segments, and I'll speak about that a little bit later. In every category we look at, there is going to be resilience. So even diversifying obviously helps spread things around so you become less dependent on any single sector. But within every sector, there is resilience. And so we have to also pay attention, between every sector, there is volatility. And so we have to pay attention to every sector and try to figure out ways to reduce volatility on a sector-by-sector basis. We also need to develop our competitiveness because there is competition, global competition in every one of these areas. And we need to start looking at our competition beyond the OECS. I am tired seeing examples of speech or hearing speeches where people talk about how we're doing relative to St. Vincent or St. Lucia or Antigua. This is a new world. This is not the old world we lived in. And due to the connectedness of our world, the competition can come from everywhere. In fact, you look at the construction industry today, and a lot of the competition to our local contractors is starting to come from China. But even in the blue economy, whether we fishing for tuna or some other type of fish, we are going to see volatility associated with pricing and industry challenges, drops in prices, other things. Nutmeg, there was a time when Grenada and Indonesia pretty much controlled the nutmeg industry, and today you have India, Indonesia, the Netherlands, the UAE, and Sri Lanka now account for almost more than 80% of nutmegs. We went from being the second largest exporter of nutmegs or producer of nutmegs to being an also ran. And COVID itself and its ripple effects will increase volatility, as for example at SGU. We have to make a concerted effort to diversify our economy and invest in productivity improvements across all business sectors. So what is my vision for Grenada? Well, first of all, I start with a vision because I think you cannot transform anything, whether it's a business or it's an economy, without starting with a vision and setting some goals. And in the business world, we don't approach any serious transformation or any serious business growth without having a well-defined vision, well-articulated vision and defined goals. And so I thought I would do that. My vision for Grenada is to have a viable, vibrant, sustainable economy with opportunities for everyone. I believe we should set a goal of creating 12,000 new jobs over the next 10 years, with 4,500 of them coming in the next 5 years by the end of 2025. And we should set a goal to double our GDP over the next 10 years, which will require a 6.7% CAGR, compounded annual growth rate. These are important goals that we need to set. Whether we use these exact numbers or we use something slightly different, it doesn't matter that much. I would also like to see a Grenada where the youth are motivated and they have opportunities for skills development and real wealth creation. And where poverty is eradicated, along with dependency, especially dependency on politicians. Where we have a leading regional healthcare system, not just about building, healthcare related industries, like many people talk about medical tourism and so, but why don't we use the medical school first and foremost to improve our own healthcare system so that our citizens have better healthcare? And then financial security for all retirees. It hurts me to see people who have worked for 40, 50 years, and then when they retire, they cannot maintain the lifestyle that they had. And many of them, were it not for remittances from relatives overseas, would be living under the poverty line. That is just not acceptable. So I know some people will look at these goals and say, these are aggressive, maybe too aggressive. But that may be true. But as an innovator in the high-tech industry, I am used to setting goals that other people thought were not possible. Almost every business I built, every product I developed, every process I developed and implemented, there were people who thought it couldn't be done. But it doesn't even matter whether it's 12,000 or 10,000. What matters is setting aggressive goals that will have an impact, and then putting systems in place and people in place to go try to achieve those goals. But for most of this presentation, I'm going to walk us through why I think these goals are achievable. Now, I know that there are committees, I believe, set up in Grenada to work on, strategies and long-term goals and all of this. And I must admit, coming from a business environment, I don't understand why it takes so long to come up with goals such as these. I came up with this in a couple of weeks. And maybe you can argue that they're not as good as they should be. I'm not sure. I think they're pretty good myself. But in order to achieve these, there are some areas we have to attack, which is human capacity, or what I call intellectual capital. We have to foster an entrepreneurial culture that creates significant employment opportunities. We have to build a stronger industrial base. And we have to change and upgrade our banking and financial systems and methodologies. There are many other things that need to be done, but these are the ones that I want to highlight tonight. Bruce Lee, who was one of my heroes, and when I lived in Grenada, I think I saw every Bruce Lee movie that came out during that time, said long-term consistency trumps short-term intensity, and no pun intended by the use of that term. That's what Bruce Lee said. Sustainable economic development in Grenada will require at least these four things. And I think if we get these four things right, we can solve the problem. Number one, we need to increase growth rates of traditional sectors such as agriculture and fisheries. And I'm highlighting these things because we can't spend all of our time just trying to increase foreign direct investments. We have to have a multi-pronged approach. We have to focus on the traditional sectors and figure out ways to help grow those sectors. But we also have to identify and develop new economic growth engines. In order to do all of these things, we must have a maniacal focus on execution and increased execution velocity. And I'm going to make a plea here directly to politicians, all politicians, not in any one particular party. A maniacal focus on execution will require that we focus on finding the best people to do the jobs and not on giving the opportunities to people because of political affiliation. We must also leverage the early adoption of technology and the fostering of an entrepreneurial culture. I think if we do these four things, we can develop the economy that we all long for. But let's start with education. The first thing we have to do is to initiate serious educational interventions, starting with the transformation of TAMCC. As many people in Grenada know, I started an initiative several years ago to transform TAMCC and try to help make it one of the premier institutions in the Caribbean, maybe even in the world. That is still something we need to do. Things didn't work out the way we thought it would, but we were able to get one of the top universities in the world to come and help. And that initiative needs, or that goal or objective needs to continue to be pursued. It is time to invest in the development and preparation of our youth. Improving TAMCC and improving our educational systems will require improving pedagogy and curriculum, developing better administrative talent, training teachers, and upgrading the facilities. All of those were part of what we had proposed for TAMCC. But we also have to focus on developing technical skills, computer science, programming, and other skills that are going to be necessary in the future. But we should leverage extracurricular activities as well, like the St. David's Trailblazers are doing to provide scholarships for people who may not be able to get scholarships through academics. The stuff that St. David's Trailblazers are doing should be expanded. There should be similar clubs everywhere in every parish trying to do the same thing. And we must find a way to partner with global leaders, top universities and other institutions. Our curriculum today is too rigid. We still have these rigid boundaries between arts and science and social science studies and things like that that must change, because the jobs of the future will require multidisciplinary skills. The jobs of the future will require a combination of science and humanities in a way that most people never imagined. A music producer will require a combination of science and music, environmental science, geography, economics, political science, and chemistry, artificial intelligence, linguistics, statistics, psychology, augmented reality or virtual reality, programming and design, and architecture, art, and science. These are just a few examples. We also have to focus on increasing performance and competitiveness globally. I would like to see us get to the point where the top universities in the world are seeking out Grenadian scholars because they want Grenadian scholars to be part of the system, and they're willing to give Grenadian scholarships to come to their school. You know, we started a program in Barbados several years ago called SPICE, which was started by my friend, Professor Cardinal Ward, and which our foundation is a major financier. And that program has created some outstanding opportunities for our young people. We now have 12 students from that program at MIT, I think 3 or 4 at Stanford, several at Harvard, and University of Waterloo, and other top universities in the world. We can develop programs in the Caribbean, and in particular in Grenada, that give our students a competitive advantage and create an opportunity for them to get into the best universities in the world. And that is important. Today, just merely having a university degree is not enough. That was okay 20, 30, 40 years ago. Today, many people have university degrees, and companies are looking for people who can make a contribution almost immediately. And Grenada, we need that as well. How many students have we sent out who got university degrees and came back and were not well prepared to make a difference in our country? We have to get people not just to get university degrees, but to get degrees and get trained in a way that they can come back and make a contribution. And the people locally, those of you who are managers and directors, and so you have to give the young people an opportunity to make a difference. And we must enhance employability, even for those people who do not go off to university. At TAMCC, we matriculate about 1% of our population every year. There is no better way to impact the workforce and develop intellectual capital than investing in TAMCC. But we're not going to get there without having the right leadership. I gave an example here of the kind of thinking we need to employ that leverages the St. George's University. Take nursing. Grenada should have a world-class nursing program that starts at TAMCC, and then where people have the opportunity to either go directly from TAMCC into the nursing field or go on to SGU to get Bachelor of Science degrees or advanced nursing degrees that can help significantly upgrade the quality of our medical systems in Grenada, but also provide opportunities for them throughout the Caribbean. And I know there's already some of that, but we can use more. And as we work on scholarship programs, let's target certain areas that we believe are consistent with our economic strategies and try to develop relationships, for example, with universities in India for software, universities in Israel for agriculture, universities in Korea for marine engineering, and Florida for marine sciences. Let us be deliberate about how we go about making this difference, because if we're not, nothing much will happen. We have a digital divide, but we can bridge it. We have a large poor population. About 38% of our population are estimated to live below the poverty line. But the percentage of internet users is too low. And there are many reasons for that. Median household incomes in many poor communities is less than $10,000 a year, EC. Many households just cannot afford to pay the $600 or $900 or $400 or whatever it is per year for broadband services. The cost of computers in Grenada at $2,000 or $1,500 is beyond the reach of many people. And extending the physical infrastructure to the last mile is not viable for many of our service providers. And this puts a lot of our community, a lot of our people at a disadvantage. But I would like to propose a way to solve that problem. I would like to propose the creation of a not-for-profit people's partnership that is professionally managed with executive leadership and a credible board of directors, where the government of Grenada and other development organizations who are supportive will lead by providing seed funding, and where Grenadian businesses will put in some money to help cover base costs of broadband service to some of these communities. And I personally, through our foundation, will also participate in helping to finance this. And then we can ask Grenadians in the diaspora to sponsor internet access for specific communities. For example, if we found 100 Carriacouans in the United States and the UK who are willing to donate $100 a year, just $100 a year, We can fund community access points for all of Carriacou. I would like to see ideas like this. You might not like my idea. If you have a better one, fine with me. I'll jump on that bandwagon any day. But instead of just sitting around and talking, we need to take action. And for all of those Grenadian organizations and Carriacouan organizations that spend all the time working individually and donating $500 a year to organizations in Grenada, maybe it's time for you guys to get together and start working on putting together real initiatives such as these that can make a difference in the lives of the communities in which we've come from. If we are going to increase our workforce, we need to build a better foundation for businesses to thrive. It should start by supporting existing businesses. And again, I want to emphasize that. Before we talk about FDI or anything else, we need to start by trying to figure out how we support existing businesses, whether they're foreign or local. We have to help our businesses improve competitiveness. We have to increase productivity and upskill our workforce. We have to reduce bureaucracy, eliminate corruption, leverage e-governance to reduce bottlenecks, provide incentives for oversized employment opportunities, reduce energy costs, and improve ease of doing business. You know, Grenada ranks about 146 out of about 200 countries on the ease of doing business rank. That is just not acceptable. But we also have to attract foreign businesses. But to attract foreign businesses, you need everything you have in the first box. That's why I'm suggesting we start by figuring out how we make local businesses more competitive. Because everything we'll do for the local business would apply to the foreign business we are attracting, because once they come into the country, they become a local business. We have to look beyond tax incentives. Tax incentives are actually not an incentive. They're an expectation. Everybody has the same tax incentive. There is nothing special about Grenada's tax incentive. And in all the board meetings that I've sat on and all the companies that I've founded, there is no decision ever made to locate in a country because of tax incentives. As I said, tax incentives is an expectation. Let us instead focus on helping companies figure out how to make more money by being in Grenada so that they can pay more taxes, because taxes are usually a percentage of profit. If we help companies to become more profitable, they're more beneficial, they employ more people, and we get more taxes. But we have to identify and develop Grenada's competitive differentiation. And then we have to target businesses that are synergistic with our strategy and our competitive advantages. And all of these things should be underpinned with leveraging our diaspora, not for political purposes, not just for remittances, but truly leveraging the connections and networks and expertise in the diaspora to help make a difference at home. And the third part of the foundation is developing a startup ecosystem. That startup ecosystem must include fostering an entrepreneurial culture. And by the way, let me make sure we understand, entrepreneurship is not just about starting a copycat business to go after the same opportunities that everybody else is in. Entrepreneurship should result in an increased pie, an increased size of market, or increased services that grows the economy. We have to make banking accessible for startup. Today, banking is accessible only to people with collateral. We have to have seed or angel funding platforms. We should try to set up entrepreneurial exchange programs and match accredited private investors, attract global talent where necessary, because we can't do this all on our own. We have to develop our ICT infrastructure, and we have to upgrade our systems and processes across the board. So remember I said Let's create 12,000 new jobs over the next 10 years, starting with 4,500 by 2025. You know, in the minister's talk last night, he mentioned about, I think, creating 400 and something new jobs in, I don't remember how many years. And that's good. Creating jobs, that's always good, but it's not enough. We're not thinking big enough. We should not be satisfied with 400 jobs over 3, 4, 5 years or whatever it is. We need to, if we're going to solve our problems, we need to be creating, 4,000 plus jobs by 2025 and 12,000 jobs in the next 10 years and make this economy so vibrant that everybody wants to be part of it. So let's walk through how to do that. Let's start with existing businesses. How can we work with existing businesses to scale and get them to employ 1,500 more people over the next 5 years than they have today? But here's a plan. We currently have over 4,500 registered companies in Grenada. Over 4,500. I've seen numbers much larger than that, but the minister said last night 4,500, so I'm going to use that number. All we have to do out of that 4,500 is get 100 of them and work with them to understand what those companies need in order to scale, and then provide the infrastructure and the support to help them to get there. If we get 100 companies to hire 15 more people each over the next 5 years, we will have 1,500 more jobs. That is 3 people per year, 3. We just need to get 100 of our 4,500 companies, 2% of them, to hire 3 people per year more. And we can add 1,500 jobs over the next 5 years just with our existing businesses. Then we should try to attract some larger enterprises. And I'm suggesting that over the next 5 years, we try to attract 2 to 3 larger companies with the possibility for hiring up to 400 or 500 employees each. And I believe if we do that successfully, we can probably get another 800 jobs. Then let's get some smaller companies. And let's see if we can attract 4 or 6 smaller companies, including hotels and agri-processing businesses. And see if we can get those companies to add 1,000 new jobs. And then startups. And you will notice that I'm putting the bigger emphasis on our local businesses. 1,500 of the 4,500 from existing businesses, 1,200 of the 4,500 from local startups. And you might say that's a lot. And it's a lot because we haven't been able to do it before. But this is absolutely doable. It will require us to find, over the next 5 years, 40 to 50 startups with the capacity, with the capability of employing 1,200 new employees. So how could we do that? Well, here's a plan. We just need 5 of these businesses to grow to 60 employees. So over the next 5 years, we just need to get 5 companies of all of these startups to grow to 60 employees each. Now, you might say that's a lot. Well, for those of you who don't know, based on the data we got from the World Bank and others, there's somewhere between 150 and 200 new companies being registered every year in Grenada. So we just need 5 of those to be successful. The problem is we don't have successful entrepreneurial companies today. We just need 5 of them to get successful enough to employ 60 employees. Then we need 15 of them to be able to employ 30 people, and 30 of them to be able to employ 15 people over the next 5 years. So for the ones that we're asking to employ 15 people, you get 30 companies that would employ 3 people per year over the next 5 years. If we can't get that kind of performance out of our startups, we are just wasting time. So let me share some of this data. Really what we need to focus on is our entrepreneurial outcomes. Over the 10 years between 2006 and 2016, based on information from the World Bank, there were 1,600 companies registered in Grenada. 1,600. Where are the jobs? The jobs are not there, which means that these companies are not being successful. Because if only 10% of them were reasonably successful, if 10%, 160 of the 1,600 had scaled to employ just 25 people each, we would have created 4,000 new jobs over that period. So our new businesses must result in more employment opportunities. And to do that, we need to have specific programs. By the way, on this chart, I showed how Grenada compares with a few of the Caribbean islands, Antigua, St. Lucia, St. Vincent. And you know, we're there or thereabouts. We're about the same with St. Vincent, maybe slightly better, maybe slightly worse, maybe than St. Lucia, and not as good as Antigua. But we're there or thereabouts. What we need is just better outcomes. And we cannot continue to depend on government. By the way, I think it's great to have government involved in a lot of things, but government can't take the lead in everything. There's a cultural mismatch between government and entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurial startups are high-risk environments. They must embrace agility. Startups mean delayed economic value. And for startup companies to be successful, they have to seek disruption, and they need visionary leadership. It's almost completely opposite to what you find in a government culture. Not just in Grenada, by the way, all government cultures, as far as I know, maybe with the exception of Singapore. Government cultures, and especially in the Caribbean, are low-risk environments. Government culture is one where it's resistant to change. They don't embrace agility. And in government cultures, immediate political value is more important than long-term economic value. That's just a fact in many countries. Governments are anti-disruption. How many times have you heard people in the government of Grenada say that's not the way we do it? And in government, you have what I call fall-in-line management. You go and you study, and when you come back, you fall in line and do what everybody else does. So government needs to create the right environment, for sure. But once government creates the environment, they need to get out of the way. Incubators. I am tired hearing about incubators, and I have to, first of all, apologize to my hosts at Communal, because I know they're talking about incubators. Incubators is a wrong idea. In fact, that's passé. The world has gone beyond incubators. If we're gonna get into something, don't get into things that people have already abandoned. Incubators imply a passive approach. You think about the chicken being hatched and the fowl sitting on the egg. Incubators represent a passive approach. Incubation is not the solution. But the idea is a good one. I'll elaborate on that some more. And venture funding, while it's necessary, is not the only thing that we need to be focused on. Too many times you hear people saying all we need is financial capital. Well, that is not true. So let's talk first about incubators, however. I have never seen a company fail because of a lack of a workspace. More companies have been started in garages and kitchens and in incubators. And in today's environment, people work very well and very productively remotely. So it is not the space that we need to focus on. It is the value add that you provide to these companies that's important. And we'll talk about that later. And we need to focus on intellectual capital. Instead of complaining about not having financial capital, focus on developing intellectual capital. Intellectual capital is what creates value. Financial capital follows intellectual capital. It's not the other way around. Investors have money looking for people to back. And if they find the right people to back, they'll back them. but you can't wait until the money is there. So focus on developing the intellectual capital and proving that you have good ideas. The money will follow. And we have to realize that businesses that are founded with lower levels of intellectual density will always require more financial capital. So it's not just having some intellectual capital, but having high density of intellectual capital. That's why some of the entrepreneurs in Grenada, instead of all starting separate businesses, should get together and start one business. Maybe we'll have a better outcome. And these entrepreneurial activities have to focus on spurring growth. And the government has to focus on providing incentives for spurring growth. And as I mentioned before, incubators might be a start. But let's focus on the other point I'm going to make now. By the way, my friend helped me put this slide together, which we thought was funny, because I made a statement some time ago that says most incubators are actually not really incubators, they're just incinerators because nothing comes out of them alive. So what does it take to increase entrepreneurial success? First of all, let's study this growth curve. This is a typical growth curve that most people who study business would see. This represents what people believe is the growth profile of businesses. And it's wrong. I know the textbook and so say that, but that is not how businesses grow. This is how businesses grow, ups and downs. What I call the harmonics of growth. And if you could eliminate or reduce the harmonics of growth, you can get to a bigger, more successful company in a much shorter time. And we need to work on reducing the harmonics of growth, because companies don't fail because they run out of money or because they couldn't get money. Companies fail because of the reason why they ran out of money or the reason why they couldn't get money. And I compare that to somebody dying. A person dies when their heart stops, but not everybody dies from heart failure. So we need to focus on eliminating or reducing the harmonics associated with growth, because you fail when you go into one of these dips and you can't get out. So I suggest we focus on building an impact center. Instead of calling it an incubator, call it an impact center, or what some people in Silicon Valley call an accelerator. I like impact center better because accelerator looks like we're just copying everybody else. And let this impact center be a hub for entrepreneurs with access to the kind of support they need to improve global competitiveness and capital efficiency. Let's help with access to markets. Bring in mentors, especially from the diaspora, who can help with access to markets, with go-to-market strategy, with operational support such as supply chain optimization and financial management, with talent acquisition, with organizational structure, and help understand the competitive landscape and market opportunities. People in Grenada have approached me several times with great business ideas they think they have, and I had to point out to them that everything they were talking about already existed. We need to have people involved who can help these companies. So instead of just setting up an incubator, let's set up the place, let's get some computers and so, but let's also provide 360 support to help these companies scale. We need to develop sustainable agriculture. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in that because there are other people who've talked about that. And sustainable agriculture must involve our youth. By the way, you'll see me talk a lot about investing in our youth. I believe it's really, really important to invest in our youth. I believe that my generation of Grenadians have failed Grenada. Many of us have gone overseas and studied and not come back, like myself, and others have returned. But instead of returning to make a difference, they've returned to curry favor with politicians to get political handouts instead of focusing on making a difference. Let's focus on the youth, and let's give the youth the tools to make the difference that our generation didn't make. If you want to attract youth to agriculture, you cannot perform agriculture the same way that we did in the past. We have to leverage technology. We have to follow best practices. We have to improve access to credits. And we have to invest in infrastructure. As I mentioned before, there's just not enough irrigation, for example, in Grenada. Infrastructure cannot just be feeder roads. And then we have to increase our value add. We also have to embed growth in the blue economy. There's a lot of talk about the blue economy and yachting and aquaculture and a lot of things. But we have to go beyond just talk and try to discuss how are we going to embed growth in these opportunities, and how do we reduce sensitivity to external shock. The banking system, as I mentioned before, in Grenada is out of date. We have 25 branches per 100,000 adults, 100,000 people. What's even worse is most of our banking activities are centered in the capital, when the majority of the population are not in the capital, and the majority of our depositors are not in the capital. The people who are in the capital are the people who are borrowing the money and spending it, not the people who are actually saving. And we need to start making sure that our banking systems are more inclusive. We have to find a way to make sure that access for the 64% of the population that do not live in the city is there. As I mentioned before, we have to leverage intellectual capital at SGU better, and in the interest of time, I'll try to not spend too much time on that. And we must institutionalize a data-driven, maniacal focus on execution. Ideas are great, and as Steve Jobs said, ideas are great, but they're worth nothing unless they're executed on. Execution is the key. Too many speeches are made and then dusted off a few years later and made again, but no focus on execution. Let's focus on execution and get our best talent to be involved. And I believe if we do these things, we'll achieve this vision for a vibrant, sustainable economy with opportunities for everyone. 12,000 new jobs over the next 10 years, with 4,500 of them by the end of 2025. Doubling of GDP, a motivated youth, hope for a better life, and hope for skills development and wealth creation. We could eradicate poverty and dependency. We could develop a leading regional healthcare system and financial security for our retirees. And we plotted here, we modeled what we think Grenada's economy is likely to look like if we don't do that. So the purplish line, I don't know how it might show up on your screen, but the first line shows our growth rate up until 2019. And in 2019, our GDP, I think, was about 1.2 billion. COVID, the impact of COVID means that 2010 is going to have a decrease. And there's talk about whether that decrease is 8% or 14%. I've seen all those numbers. We've modeled it here at 12%. If we take action now, we can change the trajectory of our economy, which will follow the top or green line, and we can have a $2 billion economy in 10 years. If we don't, we are likely to follow the bottom line. And the difference between those two is about $3 billion of incremental GDP over that period. I believe this is doable. I know it's aggressive. I know it's ambitious. And some people might even say it's audacious. But I believe transformation and innovation is not driven by reasonable people. I have been called unreasonable many times, and I consider that a compliment, because innovation and transformation are driven by unreasonable people. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so very much, Dr. Nicholas Earle Brathwaite. Masterful, deep 101. I'm touched. I'm inspired as well to move forward in confidence. After the break, we're going to have the conversation relative to Dr. Brathwaite's presentation, so feel free to chime in with your questions and comments. We're live. This is Development Agenda 2020 Post-COVID-19 Impact and Opportunities, a special mini-series of the Communal Cooperative Credit Union. We'll be back after these words.
At Communal, we are adapting to meet the changing needs of our shareholders and members. Times are changing, and with the changing times comes a whole new way to do business. Our parents may have done their banking a different way. Communal's state-of-the-art online banking and international debit card allows members to do business with great ease. It's like literally having a branch in your very own hands. Need a loan? Apply online from the comfort of your own home anywhere in the world, and your request will be dealt with remotely. Want to transfer between your accounts or another shareholder? No wait time for transactions to update. Voila! Who needs receipts when you can receive them via e-statements on your mobile device and save the environment? Not a Communal member? You can join our family today by applying online. At Communal, we see you working hard to ensure that you save, invest, and grow. Communal. Join us today. This will be the best financial decision you have ever made.
Communal is fully opened for business at all our branches. Our hours are 9 a.m. to 3 Mondays to Thursdays and 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Fridays for teller and member service transactions. For any other business, including loans, before visiting any of our branches, please contact us through the following mediums. Emails: comcreditunion@thecommunalcu.com. WhatsApp 405-6675 or 405-6689, or visit our Facebook page, or why not give us a call at telephone number 440-1755. We are committed to your safety. Communal, your small business ally and partner. Contact us today.
It is important to know what your road signs and markings means. The zigzag lines means you should not park in the marked area. Parking is allowed inside the solid white lines on the edge of the road. Remember, look out for pedestrians. Pedestrians, be sure the vehicle comes to a complete stop before crossing. These tips can save your life. These tips can make our roads safer for all users. Be safe, be seen, be smart. A message from the Traffic Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force.
And I asked them to take my...
Our new money.
Here's how you can detect genuine EC polymer notes. Feel. Polymer notes feel smoother than the material from which paper notes are made. Also, the front of each note has raised bumps at the top left-hand corner. These bumps form shapes that are familiar to you. Look for the clear window at the front and back of each note. This window allows you to see through the notes. If you hold the notes up to the light, you'll see the value of the note in an area of plain colored print. Tilt. A holographic foil is on the $100, $50, and $20. The images move and their colors change when you tilt the notes. Remember, detecting genuine EC polymer notes is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Feel, look, and tilt.
EC polymer notes. Cleaner, safer, stronger.
Welcome back to the fourth and final episode of Development Agenda 2020 Post-COVID-19 Impact and Opportunities, a special live mini-series of the Communal Cooperative Credit Union. This evening, the spotlight is on the future perspective, Grenada and the way forward post-COVID-19. A while ago, we heard from our keynote speaker, Dr. Nicholas Earle Brathwaite. He joins us via Zoom from the USA. Of course, we are going to have the interactive session now. This is your moment to connect with us, 440-1252. You can also touch base with us by way of social media, specifically the Facebook page of GBN Television, as well as the YouTube channel of the Grenada Broadcasting Network. We have our first caller. Good evening.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Kenroy Baptiste, and good evening to Dr. Nicholas Earle Brathwaite. I am very, very much delighted to be able to listen to what he had to say. That was a lot of information that he gave out tonight. And I am a person that loves to write, so while he was speaking, I was taking notes. So one of the things that he mentioned very early in his presentation has to do with the need for the unemployment situation to be looked into or to be addressed. One of the things that he said is that there are youth in their 30s who have never worked. He also said that 80% of our high-skilled persons are leaving the country. He also said that COVID-19 did not create the challenges that we are facing today. COVID is not likely to be a temporary situation, meaning we will just not return to normalcy. That was some of the things that he said. But I just want to go back to the aspect of the unemployment situation, especially with emphasis on the youth. Well, as far as I could remember, there are a very large percentage of youth, especially young men, who does not take their education seriously at all. So what you find happening is that some of these young men, they might drop out of school, they might finish secondary school, do not go on to CCCU, do not try to further their education. And so what you will find happening is that a great percentage of these young men, young ladies too, but a greater percentage of young men, they're on the block, they're getting themselves involved in all sorts of deviant behavior. And you'll find right now that Richmond Hill Prison is full to capacity right now. And so the question I would like to ask Dr. Nicholas Earle Brathwaite is, who is responsible for that? Who is responsible for the high unemployment situation, especially with relation to the youth? I would really like for him to answer that question.
Okay, thank you so much, caller. Dr. Brathwaite, who's responsible, in your view, for the high unemployment situation facing our youth?
Well, I think it's hard to just say any one person or group is responsible. Obviously, the government has to take the lead in solving the problem, but the government by itself is not the only responsible party. All of us have a role to play. But I think, I'm not a social scientist, but I think a lot of the problems that we see, with young people not finishing school and hanging out on the blocks and getting involved in trouble, I think a lot of it is tied to unemployment. If you put yourself in the shoes of a young person, if you go into school and you see the people above you go to school, they go to TAMCC, they come out and they can't get a job and they're just hanging out on the blocks anyway, why would you be motivated to go to TAMCC, to come out and do the same thing? Or when you see people go to university and come back and not able to get a proper job, why would you be incentivized to go to university? I think if we solve this problem of creating more jobs, like I'm suggesting here, massively solve the problem in a massive way, I think we can solve a lot of these other problems. By the way, one of the things you have is you have more women, more young ladies graduating from high school than men, and you have more of them going on to university than men. When you look at unemployment among young women, the percentage is higher than unemployment among young men, based on the statistics that I've seen. So I think fundamentally we have to work on solving the unemployment problem, and I think if we solve that problem, we can solve a lot of the other social issues. I think we have to, and setting goals like this, whether it's aggressive or not, it helps to bring hope to people. that there's going to be something better in the future, as opposed to the way it is now, where people have given up. But government has to lead, but it's not only government's responsibility.
Right, right. Collective responsibility. Okay, we have another caller online. Good evening. Welcome to Development Agenda 2020.
Moderator, and good evening, Mr. Brathwaite. Mr. Brathwaite, you didn't only congratulations, should I say first, and may God bless you, sir, as a Grenadian and a true son of the soil. Listen to this. You didn't only speak, you preached. I was moved here, Mr. Brathwaite. Listen to the things that a son of this here soil can say about our country and his vision for the future, having made it out there, but with work and commitment, with discipline, dedication, and all that it takes to reach where you reach. May the Lord continue to bless you.
Thank you very much.
A lot of the things that you said, I share these views. In a way, I've expressed them here on public radio from time to time because I make my noises occasionally. Mr. Brathwaite, but one thing I've found out, and this is where I want to direct my question to you as an honest Grenadian. I've found out that our little country here operates on a constitution. You see, I want to revive Grenada. I want to refound Grenada. I want to reconstitute this nation because I believe I'm a man that came from the mechanics and construction. If you don't have a proper foundation, it'll be extremely difficult to build anything on it. You don't build from windows up, you build from strong foundation. And therefore, I would like to suggest that you give some consideration to this thought. Whereas our little country has never really been constituted legitimately. The constitution, so-called, of Grenada has never been enacted in the parliament of this here country. Never was it accepted either by popular referendum from the people, and continues to be an imperial order in council of the Queen's most excellent majesty. Hence the reason why the so-called leaders, when they take power, they go away, they come back, and they get in position. You said it in a...
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Brathwaite, you wish to respond before we proceed?
But first of all, I want to thank the caller for the very kind words. And I do agree with the caller that any building of anything, like in construction, requires a solid foundation. I tried in my presentation to outline some requirements for that foundation. I want to also apologize for the fact that the slides were not showing up. I think that might have been caused by me. I thought I was sharing my screen, but it seems like it was not. I wish somebody had told me that. But I don't know much about the issue around the Constitution and stuff that the caller made, so I can't comment on it. But I will make one comment, and this is a plea I'd like to make to all politicians in Grenada, every politician. Let us focus on accomplishments for winning elections and not on politics. If we focus on accomplishments like transforming the economy and adding jobs, any politician that accomplishes these things will not lose another election for a decade or more. And we'll make a difference in the country. So let's make that the focus. Let's not the focus be on politics, but the focus be on improving the lives of ordinary Grenadians for generations to come.
Okay. 440-1252. Feel free to call and express yourself, of course. Feel free to engage Dr. Brathwaite. Dr. Brathwaite, I want to ask you this. There is no doubt a very heavy reliance on tourism in Grenada, but external shocks, for example, Hurricane Ivan and COVID-19 at the moment, have literally proven that the industry that is tourism is very volatile. Why do you think we continue to head in that direction when there is everything which suggests that we need to diversify, we need to look at other areas to grow the economy?
Because it's easy. One of the laws of physics says that an object at rest will remain at rest unless it's acted upon by an external force, and an object in motion will remain in motion unless an external force interacts with it. And I think that's true of life. You know, it's easier to just continue going along the way that we go. There's no need for vision. There is no need for execution. There is no need to reorganize. And that seems to be the way we operate. I mean, you look at our governmental structures, you look at our ministries, you look at the things we do, and it's the same as it was, you know, many, many years ago. You know, if we're serious about economic growth, we have to organize around economic growth, and it takes work. In the investment business, it's kind of the difference between the investment that we do in our firm and the investment that some other people do. Some other people invest in apps because they believe if you get the right one, Facebook will come and pay $1 billion for it and you'll make a lot of money. And we invest in what is called deep tech. We invest in the technologies that are necessary to drive future trends, the chips to make artificial intelligence happen, or in, you know, fundamental new capabilities around hydroponics or new energy systems and things like that. But that's hard work. And it's easier to just keep what's there and go along than to try to figure out how to add to it and change it. And, you know, it comes back to the culture, the difference between the government culture and the entrepreneurial culture that I talked about.
Okay.
I think it's comfortable. It doesn't require vision and it doesn't require execution, really.
Okay. Doesn't require vision, doesn't require execution. We have another caller online.
It requires some execution, but it doesn't require any change of execution strategy.
Mm-hmm. All right. We have a call online. Good evening. You're live.
Good evening. Thank you. I'd like to thank and congratulate Dr. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you clearly.
Good. I thank and congratulate Dr. Brathwaite for his presentation tonight. I want to say that I think I'm one of the 100 or 1,000 persons he proposes who would return home and reverse the brain drain. I've invested in education for the last 24 years. I'd invite him to join me. I've invested in agriculture and in tourism. My observation, to which I would like his comment, is that I think the current policies of the present government is so externally focused that, in a sense, medium or micro-level investors like myself as a returning national seem not to have the kinds of automatic support, and I don't mean automatic without any accountability, but the sorts of support that it seems that tourism investors have. Is it fair? Is it a fair observation on my part that there are many, many smaller or medium-sized nationals who are investing the way and in the sectors that you emphasize? But I think the policy emphasis seems to be away from that. Is that a fair characterization of the chasm between what you propose and what seems to be the current norm now?
Thank you, caller. Dr. Brathwaite?
Yeah, I must admit, I'm not sure I can give you a good answer to your question because some of the dynamics you're describing, I don't know that I know enough. What I can say is we lack visionary leadership in Grenada at all levels. It's not just in politics. I think we lack visionary leadership in a lot of areas, and we need to address that. Again, I think the government needs to recognize where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are and involve other people who can help move the national development agenda forward. And I think if we focus on accomplishments, if we focus on making a difference, if we focus on building a legacy, if we focus on improving the lives of Grenadians, a lot of these policies and other issues will go away. Because many of the policies and issues that we have, not just in Grenada, but in other places, even here in the United States, have to do with the desire to be re-elected or to remain in power. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that desire, but I would like to see them focus on accomplishing meaningful change, because I think that will also allow them to stay in power. So I think it's the lack of visionary leadership and the too much emphasis on politics that is probably one of our biggest problems in Grenada and in the Caribbean. And right now in the United States, we have that problem too, by the way.
Okay. A question coming in to us, Dr. Brathwaite. How do sports, culture, and entertainment fit into the scheme of economic growth for Grenada?
But there are many aspects there. Like I mentioned, the St. David's Track Blazers that are using sports as a way to help Grenadians get scholarships and further their education that they would not have been able to get. Some of the people that organization has been able to help get scholarships in the United States would not have been able to get scholarship to go to university were it not for an athletic scholarship. So I think that helps to develop our youth. So that helps with economic development. But I also believe that we can leverage, for example, the reputation that we've built to create, training opportunities and attract, athletes as a form of tourism into Grenada. The last time I was in Grenada, I went to visit the St. David's Track Blazers, and there was a team from, I think it was San Diego State University that was training with Coach Paul there. And I think we can leverage these capabilities and these accomplishments. We have produced quite a few NCAA Division I champions over the last few years. And we've produced, Olympic champions and world champions and Commonwealth champions while some of these students were in school. And we need to figure out how to leverage that to increase our, basically to expand tourism on one hand, but to maybe even create, auxiliary businesses attached to that. I personally believe it's an underdeveloped opportunity at the moment. But my focus initially is on just improving educational opportunities for our young people, recognizing that all of them are not going to be able to get academic scholarship.
Noted. All right, our final caller now online. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Kenroy.
Yes, sir.
Good evening to your distinguished guest, Dr. Brathwaite. I'd just like to congratulate him, like the other callers, for a very edifying presentation. It's something very dynamic, and I enjoyed it. I have a question. Dr. Brathwaite spoke about jobs, right? Increasing the jobs by incredible multiples, from hundreds to thousands within a certain period. But as a citizen of this country, it's not just about the quantity of jobs, it's the quality. Let me explain this. For example, we have companies coming to Grenada, right? Companies coming to Grenada and promising jobs, hundreds, for example, hotels. But when they come and they provide the hundreds of jobs, we're talking about salaries of 1,200 EC, right, per month. So even if the analysis of the statistics would say, listen, unemployment went down by a significant percentage, what is really happening here is that the quality of work is not, in comparison to what is being bandied about in relation to, the improvement of the standard of living and the improvement of the citizens' lives. So you have businesses getting incredible tax holiday of 25 years and so forth, promising jobs, but the quality of jobs and the salaries or minimum wage is at an abysmal level. What can you do in terms of policies? What would you suggest to our government to reverse that trend in terms of attracting businesses while simultaneously raising the standard of living in Grenada? Thank you.
Okay, good. Very well. Thank you, caller. Dr. Brathwaite.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. It starts with developing human capital. The fact is that most of the companies that we are attracting to come to Grenada today are not coming to Grenada because they believe we have best-in-class human capital. And so many of them are coming, the hotels are coming, but they bring their own managers, they bring their own head chefs, or they bring them from other islands, and they employ the lower-level workers in Grenada. So I do agree with you. The way to fix that is we have to, one, develop our human capital. We should be producing, TAMCC should not just be looking at how you get people into universities, we should also be looking about how we develop programs that can provide better workers for the type of industries we're trying to attract. And if we have better talent developed, not that we don't have the core talent, we have it, but we don't have the development of the talent. We have to develop the talent so that one of the reasons people are coming to Grenada is because of the talent we have. That's why I mentioned that our greatest asset is our human capital, our people, but that asset has been a declining asset over the last few years because we haven't really invested in the development of the talent. You know, if for example, services is our biggest industry and 77% of GDP, there should be huge programs everywhere for improving customer service. If construction is a big part of the economy, we should be having programs to make people get more skills in construction so that they can get higher salaries. So they're not just the day-to-day, helpers or laborers, but they could be the head carpenter or the head tiler and things like that. So I think it starts with human capital development. I think if we work on human capital development, that would help. I also think if we could attract Grenadians in the diaspora to come back and become managers, then we'll have local people who would have a vested interest in also developing the local people underneath them. But oftentimes when you have non-locals in key jobs, they may not everyone, I don't want to generalize too much, but they may not have the same, commitment to developing the talent underneath them as a local person may have.
All right, we're on the home stretch to wrap. So I just want to ask you, I noticed, I note specifically, sir, that you spoke a lot about investing heavily in the nation's youth, their development and preparation. I want you to develop that point for us just briefly, and feel free to use the time as well to give some closing comments.
But in terms of developing the youth, it starts with the schools. We have to look at our curriculum all the way going back actually to elementary school and make sure that we are training the youth and developing the youth for the future. For example, if you go back to primary school, I remember people often saying that science is a difficult subject to teach and many young people don't like science. Well, that is not true. Young people like gadgets more than old people. I think the issue is the way we teach. So for example, kids should not be taught to memorize equations and formulas as part of science teaching. Science should focus at the young age on addressing kids' curiosity. Every kid wants to know why a kite flies and maybe how toothpaste gets into the tube and things like that, how a microwave works. And if we work on satisfying their curiosity, we will start developing better human capital starting all the way from elementary school, so that by the time our students get to TAMCC, they're considered competitive. They're among the best in the world. To me, that is what investing in. It's focusing on the people, on the young people, and helping them to develop in a way that will help them to be better prepared in the future. And then when it comes to entrepreneurship, if our current policies in the banking system and others are geared towards people with collateral, we will never be able to support the youth. So why don't we have a policy that says we will allocate some percentage of our loans to businesses started by young people, and then pick some of the best young people or the best ideas and help finance those people. Some of them will fail. As an investor, some investments fail. But if you want to minimize failure, you need to have people who are helping these young people figure out how to make these things successful. As investors, we don't just invest and walk away. We work with these companies. In fact, the companies we invest in will tell you that the greatest value we bring to them is not the financial capital we invest, but the intellectual capital we bring to them to help them to be successful. So I think there are a number of ways we can do it, but one is we have to start in elementary school, develop better students there. Then we have to invest in TAM-CC and better prepare our students both for the workforce, for those who stay home, and better prepare them to get into top universities so they can come back and make a bigger contribution. And then when they come back, we have to give them the ability to grow and develop and not stifle them by forcing them to do things the way it's been done for 50 years.
Okay, very well. Thank you so very much. And Dr. Brathwaite, the same can be said about mathematics, apart from the science, the teaching methods. A lot of people have difficulty with mathematics, and when you have a conversation with them, young people, the way it's taught, and it sort of influences their perception of the subject and their interest altogether. You're absolutely spot on. Mathematics, science altogether. all right. Thank you.
Before
you
move on, much, one of the examples. When I was going to school in Grenada, and we were studying geography at PBC, and maybe it's just my memory, but I'm sure people who are in my class will remember this. We were studying geography and we were studying clouds, and we never once went outside to look at clouds. We were all looking at books and trying to figure out what cloud is what from looking at pictures in a book, and be in a tropical country where we can just step outside and look at the clouds. And we have to change that. Maybe that's why I never got to like geography much. I don't know.
Yes, I absolutely agree. All right, thank you very much, Dr. Nicholas Earle Brathwaite. Thank you for your masterful presentation. Of course, you have been making the waves. Your contribution is well appreciated. Inventor, technologist, venture capitalist, innovative thinker, successful entrepreneur. Thank you very much, sir. All right, please do stay there. Before we leave you, we cross to Lydia, Courtney-Francis.
And thanks to all the people who tuned in to hear this talk. I hope that it was informative and you thought it was worth your while.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. Before we leave you, we cross to Lydia Courtney-Francis, General Manager of the Communal Cooperative Credit Union, to thank Dr. Nicholas Earle Brathwaite, along with the other guests who appeared, of course, on this presentation over the last few days. She'll also share her closing comments on the mini-series. Yes, Mrs. Courtney-Francis, you can go ahead.
Yes. A pleasant good night to you again, Ken Roy, our guest presenter, and to Dr. Nicholas Earle Brathwaite, and to all who are tuned in and have been tuned in over the past 3 days to this mini-series. On behalf of the Communal Cooperative Credit Union, it gives me great pleasure to close off tonight's program. This inaugural Development Agenda 2020, post-COVID-19 impact and opportunities, and headline tonight's Grenada, the way forward. We as an institution have seen the timeliness to create a platform engaging key stakeholders on this COVID-19 pandemic and the implications for our country. Our tri-island state, and no doubt the rest of the world, have experienced life anew with this health crisis. Because of COVID, one's safety now is an essential practice in surviving this pandemic. As such, it is also important to ensure that there is holistic well-being among our people. I want to say, and I'm sure most would agree, we had 4 captivating evenings of thought-provoking content that has set the foundation for this national discussion of the way forward. Each night, our expert presenters expounded on key topics that are a necessity to us all. We remember that we started with the psychological perspective, and we want to thank counseling psychologist, Mr. Josh Hector, the rural development perspective, and Senator Dunstan Campbell, Senator for Agriculture and Fisheries, and Dr. Stephen Fletcher, strategy consultant. And then on the 3rd night, we heard from Honorable Oliver Joseph, Minister for Trade and Cooperatives, CARICOM Affairs, and Mr. Stephen Benjamin, Business Development at the GIDC. And tonight, Kenroy, tonight, we can say with absolute certainty that Dr. Brathwaite meticulously plotted the way forward. We consider tonight to be a blueprint. He spoke about the thrust is to bolster the backbone of the Grenadian economy. And Dr. Brathwaite has no doubt clearly articulated a myriad of avenues through which long-term sustainable development for Grenada can be achieved. Of course, we heard him about agriculture in the end. We heard a lot about that in this series, and that it is big business. To put it in his words, I recall him saying it is not just farming. He also spoke about the call for financial institutions, cooperatives like ours and others, to really have collaborative efforts and to invest to some extent without collateral. The efforts of collaborativeness and the role of these stakeholders have been clearly highlighted. So on behalf of the Board of Management, staff, members of the communal cooperative credit unions, tonight we extend our sincerest gratitude to all the expert presenters for the knowledge they imparted, and tonight to Dr. Brathwaite, and in this grand finale, as we termed it. I don't think Grenadians can forget some of the things he laid out. To the listening audience, we say thank you for tuning into our mini-series and the continued support of our credit union. To you, the Grenada Broadcasting Network, for producing this series on our behalf, and to all media houses and social media platforms who have broadcast this episode along the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. We thank you for this collaboration with us. Tonight, I want to say, Kenroy, that Communal is fully committed to this national conversation. You would have heard me outline at the beginning some of the outcomes we expect, some of the objectives we've set ourselves. We can truly say tonight that we have seen a template for the way forward for Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Let us show our strength as a nation in this post-COVID-19 impact and opportunities. We heard Dr. Brathwaite said it is not because of COVID, but it is because of what we've always done. Can we please look to doing something different from tonight? This is a call to action for Grenada. Let us all get together and execute. Execute. Thank you very much, Kenroy. Thanks to all of our presenters. Thanks to Grenada. Thanks to the Grenada Broadcasting Network and everyone else who in some way contributed to making this series what it was. Thank you again, and good night.
Thank you very much, Lydia Courtney-Francis, General Manager of the Communal Cooperative Credit Union. You're now going to say this here and now. I trust that Dr. Brathwaite's presentation can be made available to the public. There's so much going on in that presentation for us to make continued sense of. So again, Dr. Brathwaite, thank you very much indeed, and everybody who has become, of course, part of this undertaking. Right. Thank you for being part of Development Agenda 2020, Post-COVID-19 Impacts and Opportunities, a special live mini-series of the Communal Cooperative Credit Union. Thanks as well to the participating media houses, all of you. Thank you so very much. And of course, we look forward to continued collaboration. Grenada, together we can move our nation forward post-COVID-19. We have it within us to put in the work, rise above the challenges and thrive. The time to put our heads together and chart the way ahead is now. Be encouraged and stay lifted, my dear Grenada. I'm Kenroy Batiste. Thank you.